Cool. So now that we've learned kind of how socioeconomic mag works, now we have this activity for you guys to actually apply these facets to yourself, like where you would fall on each of these facets. So this activity has two portions. There's one with some sliders here, and
That's it.
yeah. Oh, and then we also have a discussion. But we're going to focus on the activity first, and then we'll do the discussion later. So we'll get to those questions at the bottom in a bit. But in front of you guys, you all have some stickers with some dots, which you can put on the different sliders to indicate, you know, if you feel like you're more towards the left of this facet, then you'll put a dot more on the left. And then if you feel like you're more on the right, then you can put a dot more on the right.
Or you can just use a pen if you want.
Yeah, or a pen.
I mean, we understand that this is a very artistic endeavor, so whatever makes you feel creative. You can even use multiple colors. Yes. Okay, so you are actually preparing. Alec, maybe, did you remember to point out the scenario at the top? So this is in the context of you're preparing a Canvas-based lecture for a course you've never taught before in a new university. And you're using, so basically it's in that context that you answer this.
Yeah.
It's up at the top of your page.
Hopefully they can no longer hear me in the room, physical room. So I sent the link to the slideshow. And you can, what you each can do is just duplicate that first slide and then read over the scenario at the top. And what you're going to do is move those little dots on the different facet sliders to represent your facet value for that particular scenario.
Okay, just, can you hear me, Rose?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Rafael, just for the sake of clarity, what file exactly shall we have to open? The number 1, number 2, number 3, 4?
It's number 3.
Okay, zoom reflection. Okay, and then we move the circle wherever we are more comfortable with, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Rose, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I was just curious for the communication, the second facet. So we communication literacy, education, and culture. Is there a reason why I mean, there are 3 very different parts, right? Communication literacy, education, and culture, why they're all combined? I mean, one person could be high on one part of one of these 3 and low on other of these 2. So
yeah, that's a really good question. Let me pull up the persona real quick. I believe that the reason that this facet is grouped together the way that it is because of access to education and what that looks like for different socioeconomic groups. So it's a little bit tricky to explain clearly, but for example, you might have somebody who's lower SES and you know, maybe they're working a job in high school while also going to school. So maybe it's not maybe they have all these other factors that are influencing how their education and learning is, how well that's going for them. And also in terms of culture, I see Mark's comment here. Access to culture is an interesting way to put it. So
No, we're not ready for that.
We're thinking in terms of culture about making, for example, pop culture references.
Let's go into that.
Research tells us that more people of lower socioeconomic status, and this isn't necessarily because they're low SES, it's just correlation statistically that they have they're less likely to understand cultural references, maybe pop culture, maybe you're referring to a movie that you think everybody knows, but some people might not pick up on that, might not understand it. So that's the kind of culture that we're talking about.
I see. I mean, yeah, I see. It's like a perspective, right? Because when I look at it, for culture point, I mean, from where I come from, there are people who are not educated, but they are like very strong in their understanding of the culture aspects that is for that community. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's a question that we can ask Margaret as well, for a more concrete answer.
Rose, I noticed that attitude towards technology risk is the same for Dave and Ash, correct?
Yeah.
And the same is with the technology private security between Ash and Fee, which is correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the Ash persona is sort of somewhere in the middle. So you have Dave and Fee on those extreme endpoints, like Margaret was saying earlier, and then Ash provides a third set of values where some of those values are sort of a combination of Dave and Fee, and some of them are unique values. And so that kind of represents how most people in reality are more actually like Ash, because there are not so many people who actually meet those full endpoints of Dave and Fee because they're pretty extreme.
Okay, thank you.
Did everyone get a chance to fill this out? Shall we have a little discussion?
Just a second.
So would anyone be willing to share one or two of their facet values?
Would you guys like me to go first so you guys can view an example?
Go ahead.
Okay. My slide is on slide 8. So for the first one, do we have access to reliable technology? I put it all the way up because I have high access to technology. It means I have access to Wi-Fi at all times. For communication, literacy, education / culture, I put a little higher on my end because I'm in higher education. Literacy, I feel like I'm proficient enough, at least compared to my peers, as an undergraduate student. For attitudes towards technology risk, I am a little risk averse. Sometimes I am kind of scared to like explore all like that side. So I put it towards the middle. For technology, privacy, and security, I put it as that I view tech features as high risk, because sometimes I might be a little uncomfortable with exploring that side. Perceived control and attitude toward authority. I actually do believe that we can challenge it. Sometimes, you get an output and it's not the one you wanted. Most of the time it's because you didn't specify it, or it wasn't, or I didn't specify it, or it wasn't like I didn't set up like the right conditions for the output that I wanted. So I believe that it could always be changed. And then technology self-efficacy. Compared to my peers, I do believe I have a high efficacy. I'm very comfortable using technology and learning new technology. And I'm not scared to explore. Okay, and those are my facets.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone have any similar facets or maybe different facets than those ones?
Go through mine too.
Sure.
Okay, so for the access to reliable technology, it's closer to I. I think I didn't put it all the way to I because I depend a lot on Wi-Fi in different buildings. So, but I'm rarely in any building that doesn't have Wi-Fi. So, I think I have access to reliable technology. For the second one, I think I was just looking at communication culture and your explanation. I'm not American. I didn't grow up in America, so I may not be able to understand a couple of references. So that's why I'm sort of in the middle here. For attitudes toward technology risk, I mean, depending, I think, on the type, well, for this particular technology we are looking at now, I think I'm more likely to just want to find out how to use the technology and just use it the way it's prescribed, basically, instead of, trying to like find different ways to use it or something like that. So I can, if it's a simple issue that I need to solve, then I may be willing to, tolerate a couple of risks and try out different things. But if there's like a prescribed way of doing it, I'm more likely to follow that than, tinkering. For technology, privacy, and security, I think I just believe it's high risk. There are different types of data, different companies trying to get some sort of data access. So, privacy and security, it's just always good to just know that whatever you put out there is always going to be out there, basically. So that's why I put that closer to high risk. For the passive control, technology outputs cannot be challenged or changed. I think that should not be a good thing. I believe output should be amenable to user inputs. I believe people should have agency while using whatever technology they're working with. For self-efficacy, I think I'm closer to I. So yeah, relative to my peers, I think I have, at this stage now, I think I have enough technical skills relative to my peers. Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we're moving to the discussion questions as well. So something that's really interesting about the SESMag facets, as well as the gender mag facets, or really any inclusive mag facets, is that they can change over time or with the situation. So the scenario that Alec had for us in this activity was in preparing Canvas-based lectures for a course. But does anyone have any other scenarios where the facet values that you put for this scenario might change in any kind of a way? Any thoughts on that?
I can maybe try to speak to that.
Sure.
As I was going through these sliding rules and trying to figure out where I would put my little dot, I really couldn't connect it to the task. In other words, I felt that my answers would somewhat remain the same and not depend on the task.
Mhm.
Because these seemed very, very general. And
Sure. So
I couldn't connect it to the task. So I don't know what others felt about it, but I just couldn't find myself connecting to the particular task in this case using the LMS technology. There may be some connections, but I feel like my selections would largely remain the same.
Yeah, I thank you very much for this reflection, because while Jill was talking, I realized that I have experienced the very same things. So my attitude was not at all based or driven by the question itself, but I was more thinking about my feeling regarding technology per se. So yeah, but I shall say that I would not think about this without Jill reflection. I mean, I just realized, oh yes, that's what I did. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
anyone have other similar thoughts, different thoughts?
I think for me, on contrary, it depends. For example, if I'm working with a familiar technology, something that I'm used to, then the last but one facet, perceived control or attitude towards authority, the technology outputs can be challenged or changed. Since I would have more awareness of what the thing is, so my perceived control would be higher, and technology self-efficacy would also depend on if something is new or if I'm already familiar with it. Same thing with the risk averse aspect. Yeah, so there are a few things which for me depends on what we are discussing about.
I think for me, I can imagine if I were setting up the LMS with my past institution, which was a military institution, where while I have like high technology confidence and I can think things can change, I think my perceived control and attitude towards authority was very different in that other environment, where I'm like, oh, this might be set up wrong, and there's no hope that I can get them to set it up right. And so I had this sort of, that would really change, that I would have low a feeling that if some the technology is not working on my behalf, I just have to abandon all hope. And that was very much due to the environment. And similar with my confidence to follow help seeking or documentation, that like I felt out of place culturally. And so I would have rated myself as like lower literacy, since I can't get access to like help as easily in that other environment. And I don't really have access to like military culture as easily. So like the people I'd interact with would often have touchstones that didn't make sense to me or acronyms that didn't make sense to me. So I can kind of see within my own experiences of like, if I imagine filling this out where I'm back at my old school, I might have filled this out differently.
Yeah, I think those are some really good examples. Even sort of in smaller daily tasks, I could see some of my facet values changing a little bit. For example, in terms of the privacy and security, if I'm doing my taxes, I'm probably a lot more concerned about that than if I'm like, for example, making a tweet that just says, "Oh, I got, had a great day today." So it could be small changes like that based on the scenario or what you're doing. Or like Yulia said earlier in the when she was sharing her assignment, I believe that she said that her gender mag related facet values actually changed over time, but kind of depending on where she was in her life. So could be kind of bigger changes over time or smaller changes just based on the task or scenario. So we'll move on to the next question, and hopefully we have time, which is, how might your facet values affect how you work in a team? Anyone have thoughts on that?
Well, if I feel I have low access to one of these things, that would definitely affect how what I might volunteer to do within the team.
Yeah, another one that comes to mind, just briefly before we go to take a break, is that for me, I'm not super concerned about privacy or security most of the time. It's not something that I really worry about a lot, but I could imagine if I'm working with a teammate who maybe, you know, is really concerned about that, then I have to be a bit more careful about respecting that and how they feel about privacy and security. But it looks like we're actually moving to our break. So let's take that and come back in 10 minutes.